fans view this afternoon. I'm going to wait till a few folk come on live first before we start talking about the 15 teams. There has been compiled a list of the 15 teams that have played in the Champions League since its inception, and they have counted out the amount of points that each team has amassed. They've compiled a list of points that each team has amassed over the 15 teams that have been in the Champions League. Not saying over the years, but the British teams. They are going on. It's a nice little one that's been written. 15 best British teams in the Champions League history. British club has enjoyed huge amount of success in the Champions League, accounting for 16 of 69 triumphs in the competition. The likes of Aberdeen, Derby County, Linfield make the British top 15 all-time Champions League table based on points accumulated. Historic giants Manchester United and Liverpool, they're also in it. Also, from Manchester United's success in 1991 and 1999 with Alex Ferguson, to Celtic being the very first team. Yes, the very first team to win the Champions League, and it wasn't in the form that it was in now, but it was the Champions League. Let's face it, it was the big cup, and we brought the big cup home. We were one of the first British teams. We were the first British team to bring it home, and that shouldn't be forgotten. But we're going to start off at number 15. Sitting in 15th. It's a surprise. It's a shock even. Some may say it's a shock to see Aberdeen sitting in 15th place in this league of all-time British Champions League table. Teams that have played in the Champions League. And Aberdeen have amassed 19 points. They've had 12 matches in the Champions League. They've had 5 wins, 4 draws and 3 losses. And they've got 19 points in the Champions League in total. Next up is Derby County. Derby County have played 12 matches. They've had 6 wins, 2 draws, 4 losses, and they've amassed 20 points. And 13th, they're Linfield. They've played 42 matches. They've had 5 wins, 12 draws, 25 losses. And then next up is Newcastle. Believe it or not, when was the last time Newcastle were in the Champions League? That must have been a long time ago. They've had 24 games in the Champions League, Newcastle. They've had 8 wins. They've had 4 draws and 12 losses, amassing 28 points. Not a lot of points, you might think. But next up is a surprise, because it's Aston Villa, who are 11th in this league of British all-time teams in the Champions League. They are sitting with 18 matches played. They've had 12 wins, 3 draws and 3 losses, and they amassed 39 points, which is strange when you think they're sitting this year in the Champions League with 3 wins. They're sitting with 3 wins, which is quite remarkable for Aston Villa. So now we're going to the top 10. No, better not, because that's just it's just wrong, isn't it? But anyway, next we'll go to the top 10. And sitting in 10th position of these top 15 teams is Nottingham Forest. Nottingham Forest, yes. They have a illustrious history in bygone times in the 80s of being in the Champions League. They've had 12 wins, 4 draws and 4 losses in the Champions League. And they have 40 points. Next up is Leeds with 38 matches. 38 matches in the Champions League, 20 wins, 6 draws and 12 losses with 66 points. Next up, this is one that will get some Celtic fans going, maybe Ange has a point. But it's Tottenham. Yes, it's Spurs. Spurs are in 8th position in this league. They're sitting on 61 points and they have 27 wins. They have 13 draws and 21 losses. And they sit on 94 points. Now, next up is an interesting one. It's our old foe, and they come in 2 guises. They come in a guise of a club that died in 2012, formerly known as the Rangers FC, and then they have the new guise of the Sevco, who managed to buy the history of the club. Sevco 2012 managed to buy the history of the club and maintain that They have this history, but we know that they died in 2012. Yes, Rangers died. But they are in this league of all time in the Champions League table. And believe it or not, they have played, and this is where it gets interesting, because They always say that we are the people, we're up there and we're better than Celtic. And when you think back to the 1990s, and especially me, when I think back to the 1990s when they were on the road to their bottom 9 in a row, and the amount of times that they were in the Champions League then, and all the so-called success that they had, or they thought they had. Anyway, they have played 131 games in the Champions League. They've got 43 wins. Only the 43 wins. They've got 31 draws, and they've got 57 losses. And they've amassed over 160 points. 160 points. So yes, they have got 160 points. So I'm just going to say good afternoon to everyone in the comment section before we go any further, because when it gets the next one up is fantastic. First up was Gary Haycroft. He is in this afternoon. Wilson QW is in the house. Big Des says hail, hail, Baz and Troops. Gemma says hi everyone. Tam Max in the house saying hail, hail. Paul McCune says afternoon everyone. And Jim McClarty says hi, hail, hail everyone. Lorna Gallagher's in the house also. Frank Kennedy says afternoon boys. JT Boy 67 says a great European defensive display last night. It was that. Gemma says, hey, Lorna. Michael Bryan's in the house. Philip Quinn's in the house. Tam Max in the house. I was just reading about Atlanta fans being in major meltdown after last night's 0-0 draw. Yes, and let's face it, Celtic took the moral victory out of it. It's the first time ever in Celtic history that we've probably... It's the closest that we'll ever be to feeling like a Rangers fan this morning. But anyway, we deep fried their pizzas. We deep fried their pizzas. Yeah, we do that. Afternoon Dudes says Plunge McNugget. Joe McFarlane says good afternoon. And Tamak, hail the boys says then Henke arrived for us. The rest is history. Patrick's in the house from Bulgaria. From Bulgaria's Patrick. Fantastic coming in from Bulgaria, Patrick. Hope you're enjoying the channel. Lanky returns. He does even. I always think it's weird when you jump between the two channels. We're sitting 20th place in the table. Yes, we are. But this is the all-time 15 British teams in the Champions League. And we have run through positions up to 16, I think it was just now. I'll remind myself in just a minute. And we'll go over it again. And if you missed the start of the video, you need to go back and watch it again. Ian Roy says, watching the hair of the dog slightly fuzzy. He'd Baz. Yeah, I bet there's quite a few. Anyway, let's get back into the 15 British teams in the Champions League. We started off at number 15. We'll just remind ourselves that Aberdeen were sitting in 15th position with 19 points. Derby County, Linfield, Newcastle and Aston Villa were sitting 11th on 39 points amassed in the Champions League. Next up was down to positions 10 to 7. Nottingham Forest was sitting on 40 points. Leeds were sitting on 66. Tottenham were sitting on 94. The Rangers, and both guises of them being dead and zombies and the old co, are sitting on 160 points. Next up, in 6th position, is the mighty Glasgow Celtic. And we're sitting, and remember, Rangers have played 131 games. 131 games in the Champions League. Celtic have played 159. We have played 159 games in the Champions League. Way more. That's more than one season. That's good few seasons worth more than the Sevco and the Rangers and whatever guys you might talk about. But the important part is Celtic have had 62 wins in the Champions League, whilst Rangers have had 43. Celtic have had 29 draws. Rangers have had 31. Celtic have had 68 losses, which is the kind of bit that lets them down, I suppose. But we have amassed over 215 points in the Champions League, which puts us way ahead of them. Way ahead. They're sitting on 160 points that they've amassed. And Celtic have amassed 215, which puts us up in near enough the top 5. So who's in the top 5 of these teams? Well, the top 5 are the teams down south that you would expect. Coming in at number 5, Manchester City. They've played 130 games in the Champions League. Not as many as Celtic, but they are sitting, they've won 74 matches, they've drawn 27, and they've lost 29. Has Manchester City. They're sitting on 249 points, and then it gets interesting because it's teams that are regularly in the money side of the Champions League since the early 2000s. Next up is Arsenal. They've played over 200 games. They've won 95 times, and they're sitting on 330 points. Next up is Chelsea. They're sitting on 355 points. Then there's Liverpool. It's interesting that Liverpool are sitting second in this league. They're sitting on 441 points. And Manchester United, who have played 289 games in the Champions League, are sitting on 528 points. So there you go. There you have it. Celtic are sitting number 6 in that league out of the 15 teams, which I thought was interesting. It was interesting. It's someone's put a bit of effort into that. So fair play to whoever it was. And the fact that Celtic have had 159 matches in the Champions League shows you that we have a history in the Champions League that goes way back. Yes, it does go way back to 1967 when we won it, and before. But yes, it's absolutely fantastic that we do beat the Sevconians, because let's face it, it's a day for rubbing it in against them. Anything that we can come out with today that says that we are better than them, I'm all for that. Get it right up, yees, as they say. But anyway, yeah, I just thought that was a nice little video for us to do. So let's jump into the comment section and see how you're all enjoying that this afternoon. Scottish first. Big Tam Max sitting, he's sitting there drinking just now with the hair of the dog. Seems quite a few people are sitting with a hair of the dog. Let me just see. We ain't British, we're Scottish. Yes, I know that, but it was a publication that put it out, and it was all the teams from the United Kingdom. There you go. That were all included. We are a Scottish team, but that's just get over it. Jesus, it's not me that done the thing. It was someone else, and I just thought it was a nice video. But anyway, who cares? Big Des says, I'm having a wee cure myself, then going to watch the comedy tribute act tonight. Great result, but celebrating a draw. I've seen that before somewhere. Over the rainbow. I don't care. It was a fantastic... I think there's a difference between celebrating a draw in the Champions League and having a clean sheet for the first time since 2017 to celebrating a draw against your rivals and not winning the league. I think there's a massive difference. And I know which one I would rather be doing, and that's celebrating a 0-0 draw in the Champions League and having a clean sheet to celebrating a draw and not winning the league. It's obvious we have a bigger history than Sevco. They're only 12 years old, says Pat. JT with the chart puts the number 1 in Scotland something today. The zombies to the shed over. Temp Lap says, raging buns all over the place, still think they're relevant. They're not. And talking about people that thought they were relevant, I see that Tom English was kind of a bit just being Tom English, and that's going to... He was on Twitter last night, X, whatever it's called now, and he was just being his usual knob-end self towards Celtic. Now we have to play... what do we do? Sit back for 15% of the ball or lose... who cares? It's funny that you've got quite a lot in the media, including... John Hartson having a dig at Celtic today. But I'm surprised at John Hartson. I am surprised at John Hartson, since John Hartson is one of these guys that takes money off his Celtic fans for all the gigs that he does around the country. But he's had a dig at Adam Ida. He has had a bit of a dig on Adam Ida on Go Radio today, which I think is a former Celtic player and a ex-Celtic player that still goes around all the CSCs and goes to Celtic events, and he's happy enough to take your cash. But I don't like ex-players slagging off current players. I just don't like it at all. But it is what it is. He doesn't think he's a great striker, and he doesn't know why we bought him. But yeah, I think we'll just leave it at that. Anyway, we might be back on later on tonight, depending on the score tonight, obviously. If it goes right, it's going to be late here. That's the only thing. It is going to be late because it's a late kickoff. Anyway, I hope you like that nice little... Carly's in. Hello, Carly. AR celebrations, let's jump back at the comments. Any celebration of the Huns at Hampden against St Johnstone was the biggest embarrassment of all. Yes. How could you forget that? earlier this season when there was only the Onion Bears. The Onion Bears. How much money have we made with the 4 points, says Stuart. It doesn't really matter how much we made off the 4 points because Celtic would have already had an advancement of £20 million as part of the money that was coming to them from the Champions League this season. I think the first payment that was coming through was 20 million. So they've got 20 million in the bank already. And it'll be interesting because the AGM is coming up shortly. Yes, Celtic have announced the date for the AGM. And when is that actually again? Because let me just go here. Celtic announced the date of the AGM. Now, remember last year at the AGM, they all slapped each other on the back and said it was fantastic and we were doing well and we made 32 million for merchandise sales. They won't come out with those numbers yet, but they'll get to talk about it and they'll be asked about transfers, transfer windows. They'll be asked about certain things. They'll be asked about the Green Brigade. They'll be asked about other things, about getting a fan on the board. The certain fan groups will be trying to put pressure on the board to do things, and the board will sit there and go, "Oh, you shut up, you wee dobber. We're top of the league looking down on the Rangers. That's enough." And then Peter Law will go, and that's enough. But anyway, it will take place on November the 22nd at Celtic Park. And the AGM will start at 11 o'clock, 11:30. The AGM offers shareholders the chance to engage directly with senior figures such as Brendan Rodgers, Michael Nicholson. I can't wait. I'd love to be at one of these and see how much Nicholson talks, because there's a lot of people say that he doesn't do a lot of talking. And then obviously Peter Lawwell will be given a platform. It's not really a platform, is it? It's people stand up and go, "What about this?" And they go, and then Peter Lawwell makes some joke about Sevco, and then that's it. They'll obviously talk about unacceptable conduct and things like that, but and then the media will have a field day with their usual anti-Celtic nonsense. The drink along went well. Baz says Kaiser last night on that other channel. Kaiser, just start your own channel and do a drink along and stuff. Fuck that other lot, and just do it yourself. I don't know why you just don't do it yourself. It would be a lot better. Than having to worry, but then, what do I say? Anyway, thank God last night is over. Can relax now. Oh, Big Des, you're a cracker. Bobsky says, "I think we won't see the best of Rio Hatate until we adopt the lyrics of a Duran song and sing it from the stands. He probably grew up singing it himself." Big John is entitled to his opinion. I just thought that we would get battered. I'm delighted the team shut me up, says Plunge McNugget. Yeah, he's entitled to his opinion, but I think when you're an ex-Celtic player that does make a lot of money off of these Celtic events, I mean, he's at Celtic events nearly every second or third weekend. You know, so you can't be a... we're all entitled to our opinions. I just don't think it's right that he should be commenting on current players or dissing current players where he still takes a wage for Celtic in a way. But anyway, Kaiser said, Lanky return, AGM, what does it stand for? I'm gone mental. Yep, I'm gone mental. 2.3 million for a win, 700,000 for a draw, on top of the 20 million that we've already had so far, says Tap Lab. Jed Johnson says, to be fair, Big Bad John, I thought Big Adam done hee-haw off the ball. He didn't chase down enough and he was screaming for Kyogo to take his place last night. But as Jed, it was a difficult night for... If you watch the game again, if you watch it back, right, and if you watch what he was doing, he was up against a big defender. The manager was right. The manager was right not to play Kyogo for the start, because Kyogo would never have went man-to-man with that big defender. And I mean, the first touch that Kyogo had of the ball, the defender just knocked him aside as if he wasn't there. If that was to go on for 70 minutes, do you know, there was every chance that Kyogo would have come off with a dislocated shoulder again. So the fact that we put a big man up there, And fair enough, he's not a big bad John Hartson, he's not a Chris Sutton. Do you know what I mean? But it's a different game. John Hartson as a player could not cope with the way that Celtic play in this day and age, because he doesn't have the pace. John Hartson would not get in the modern Celtic team if he was a player today, because John Hartson didn't have the pace. Doesn't have the pace to play as a striker for Celtic. He's just not got it. He didn't have it at all, and he's not got the pace he had Almeida, and he's definitely not got the pace of Kyogo. It's a completely different time. They played football 20 years apart, so it's you know, it is what it is. Anyway, Hartson wasn't exactly the quickest either. That's what I just said. That's what I just said. So I just seen your comment there, Ian. Yeah, I want him to stay, but it doesn't matter if they score tonight. I don't know what you're talking about. Murty went AWOL. Yeah, here's that. Ibrox be 3/4 full tonight. Is that a Base X t-shirt, Bass? How do you know? Did I show it? If you know, you know. If you know, you know. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. Anyway, that's time for me to wrap it up in this video. It's just a quick one. It'll cost them $4 million to pay. Flip-flop off. Who cares? Who cares? And yes, it is a Base X t-shirt. I shall see it. It's been worn on stage twice. That's all I'm saying. And on that note, have an absolutely fantastic day, Celtic fans all around.